Good evening, everyone. So, today we will be discussing the ultimate reality, a personal God. So, a personal God, the supreme or ultimate reality, such as the being perfect in power, wisdom, and goodness, who is worshipped as a creator and ruler of the universe. This is called theism, and it is view of God traditionally held not only by adherents of great monastic religion. There are five attributes of the traditional concept of God. First, necessity. Second, omnipotence. Third, omniscience. Fourth, eternity. And last, the immutability. Necessity. God is conceived as a necessarily extant being. To exist as necessary being has meant to be being existent does not depend on anything or anyone. It is self-existence. A necessary being can be contrasted with a contingent being. A contingent being is a being that might not exist. If such a being does exist, it could well not have done so. In addition, a contingent being's existence is dependent on something else. It is not self-existent. From a Western perspective, when we examine the world, we find that it is filled with contingent being. So, it is explained that it is a necessity because it is our way to explain the things na we cannot find an answer. For example, nga why there is a planet, stars, and galaxy, or even the small particles in the world, nga why they exist. So another property typically attributed to God is omnipotence. From the Latin omnis means all, and potens means powerful, which is the property of being perfect in power. But what does it mean to be perfect in power? So, philosophers throughout the ages have struggled with these questions. Even the great Christian theologian, philosopher Thomas Aquinas labored with this one. He quoted that even though all confess that God is omnipotent, it seems difficult to explain in what his omnipotence precisely consists. So, a common understanding of omnipotence is that he can do anything and whatsoever. God can create a world, God can answer prayer, God can do miracles, and so forth. But can God really do anything? What about creating square, circles, or married bachelors? So, what about existing and not existing simultaneously? What about sinning? Can God sin? So, a few philosophers have thought that absolutely nothing can limit God's power. So, philosopher Rene Descartes, for example, maintained that God is not limited by anything, including the laws of logic or mathematics. For Descartes, God could make it true that some object both exist and that not exist at the same times, or that 2 plus 2 equals 5. For the stance of Descartes, he said nga, even logically, God can make everything. For example, aniyayakan nga, 2 plus 2 equals 5. So, diba, logically, it is 4. For God kuno, God kuno is powerful kaupay. For God, may himo kuno ito niya nga, 2 plus 2 is 5. But most of philosophers have not agreed with Descartes on this point and have qualified they claim that God can do anything whatsoever, with no one such as God can do anything that is logically possible, or God possesses every power which it is logically possible to possess. Something is logically possible if it does not violate the basic laws of logic, such as the law of non-contradiction, which is that a proposition and its opposite cannot both be true. One representative of this view is Richard Swinburne, and he expresses the point this way: a logically impossible action is not an action. It is what is described by a form of words which purport to describe an action, but that not describe anything which it is coherent to suppose could be done. It is no objections to A's omnipotence that he cannot make a square circle, This is because making a square circle does not describe anything which is coherent to suppose could be done. So, given the belief that God cannot perform certain actions, neither immoral ones nor logically impossible ones, for example, many theists have held to the traditional Anselmian view of omnipotence as meaning perfect power rather than absolute power. On this view, mere power itself is not praiseworthy, but perfect or excellent power is. Since it is no perfect power to be able to break promises or lie or violate contradictions, even though these actions cannot be performed by God, God is nonetheless omnipotent.